So we learn about better ways to do things and our higher efficiency, and then that gives us that multi-dimensional and diverse way of doing life, which will actually help us from getting burnt out. And being burnt out doesn't necessarily mean that you hate the world, that you don't want to be around people, that you're out of love, that you're anything like that. Being burnt out feels a lot like numbness. You might feel numb to emotions, lack of empathy, obviously. I think that's something that everyone can kind of relate to. So when you lose your empathy for people and for different situations and scenarios, it's because you've burnt yourself out. You've run on fumes for so long that you no longer have the fuel to keep going in the way that you'd like to. I'm going to bounce around to another stage. Let's see which one. Oh, that one works really well with us, actually. Stage 9, depersonalization happens. You do not feel like yourself. So this is stage 9. Your body's not broken down yet, but you feel numb inside. You feel like you are disassociating. Do you remember when we talked about complex PTSD and what the difference is and why it's different than PTSD? It's because it takes time and years. And what I remember learning, I don't know if I've talked about this before, but when I remember having a great epiphany whenever I went to one of my first therapists, he gave me a worksheet. He wouldn't talk. He was a male therapist. I would just wait and wait and wait. And a lot of people that try and do therapy, they're like, I can't do it. They just sit there and listen. Well, yeah, that's their job. They're supposed to sit and listen to you. They're trying to get to know you for the first 4 sessions at least, to be honest. If they say and give you any kind of feedback, you should be happy. But this particular therapist sent me home with a little workbook and worksheet. And it was a scoring tool for stress. And I think I have maybe mentioned this once before, but the normal stress level was something like, I don't know, I think maybe 15 or 20, something around that number. And whenever I tabulated and I calculated all of my stress indicators and the scores for it, I think I came up to something like 115. It was massive. That was the biggest eye-opener for me personally. And I realized that I had been under that kind of stress for probably a decade, at least, if not more. Tangible stress. I had effectively burnt myself completely out of any kind of emotional stamina that I had. And we do that. And we do that for the people that we love. But we need to do things in the meantime that will counteract the burnout and fuel and add fuel for us. Let me see another one. Stage 7. So this is the stage before the depersonalization. You withdraw from social life and family as well. Do these stages remind you maybe of clinical major depressive disorder? Because it sounds like it. Depression has a stigma that sounds a lot like the burnout phases, but depression can also manifest in a very different way, where you are not gonna maybe be stuck in bed every single day, but you might be more of an avoidant personality and be very flighty, which means that you're not grounded, you're not, staying within your routine, your daily routine, you're not enjoying your life, and you're actually seeking out things to disassociate. So remember, CPTSD, there's a dissociation that happens where you are trying to remove yourself from the stressful or situation that is burning you out and into a different scenario altogether, whether it's fantasizing mentally, whether it's books, whether it's video games, whether it's writing. All these things that we call coping mechanisms are actually our little escapes, okay? And there's nothing wrong with escapes. but there is everything wrong with living in your escapes. So make sure that if you are doing those things to where they're affecting your actual responsibilities, right? So if your escape is, I'll use one of mine, dancing. I love dancing. My kids know it. All my friends know it. And that is one of my coping mechanisms. I love to go and cut a rug. I didn't start dancing until I was like 31 and my siblings took me out for the first time. But here's the deal. If I love going dancing as my escape and I choose to go dancing every single night, which I'm not going to lie, if I go on a spring break, I'm probably going to be out dancing every night. But if that affects your performance at your job, if that affects your performance within your family, if that affects your emotional stability, if that affects your school life, if that affects, and the list goes on with all of the things that make you who you are and compose you as an individual negatively, then it's time to dial it back. You cannot live in your escape without it affecting your reality. And the reality is that we all have responsibility, and it's called balance for a reason, right? We need to balance our lives. We need a great work-life balance. And life, it seems like, work has become this really compartmentalized item, and everyone is trying to detach it completely from our life. And then on the other spectrum of things, I know people that don't have a life outside of work. And so work is their life, and that's the only place that they get their socialization. And so when they go home, they don't really know what to do with their lives other than what? Sit in front of a TV vegetatively, eat a TV dinner, maybe order, Uber Eats or DoorDash or whatever you're doing, or whatever your escape is. So then what are you doing really, to be honest? You either have work where there's a lot of ultra responsibility, and you have the escape. And there is no you. There's no individuality. There's nothing in between that. And that can be really detrimental to you as an individual. And what I recommend for you to be able to figure out what that balance needs to be is, what are the things that you enjoyed most as a kid before you had responsibilities, right? For me, it was what? It wasn't dancing. That's a new thing. So it's not like you're not going to come up with new things that you love as an adult. That maybe, like in my case, growing up more religious, we weren't really allowed to dance, right? To express ourselves in that way. So it was very taboo. And then I got out there and I was like, hey, I can get down with this. I like dancing. That's a new hobby. But as an adult, I remember my best moments being either being on a boat, or playing tennis, or socializing while playing soccer, or going to the gym and lifting weights with a friend of mine, or listening to music and raging to it and yelling off the top of my lungs in the car as an adolescent. So those are things that I still enjoy doing and very much make who I am. Socializing with people, talking, problem solving, talking about philosophical things, reading some books, self-help books, or watching Netflix, binge serial, watching different things. So that's what I'm saying. Like, we can come up with all of these different scenarios that happen in between our escapes and our actual work life. That's what it means to have work-life balance. Escapes cannot be your life. Okay, that's not what work-life balance is. Escapes should be what? Whatever percentage you say it should be of our lives. So if you enjoy going out, but you don't really have a good way of keeping yourself accountable, maybe instead of going out every weekend, you select one weekend out of the month. And your friends will then know this is their weekend. Or if you're the reverse side, and you know that for you, it's very easy to work, and then come home and work, you need to get in touch with either a good friend of yours that can hold you accountable. And on certain days, even if your house is a pigsty and you haven't done everything, Those are your days where you're achieving balance. You're either going and having a sleepover and Netflix and watching and conversational, or whatever your, thing is that you want to do is going to be to escape, right? Reality. Or if you're accustomed to working 2 jobs and never having time off, creating that balance where you say, okay, once I save this amount of money, I'm going to cut back my hours on my second job. And that time is going to be just for me to follow whatever it is that your passion is, whether you're writing a book, reading a book, listening to music, going for a hike, car shopping, house shopping, anything that you feel like you enjoy doing and you don't get to do very often. So it's all about the balance in life. And a lot of times people think that it has to be the extravagant things that we do. So for, in the healthcare industry, because most of my employees work in healthcare or some sort of services, I make it a point for every quarter, some sort of small service incentive to be given to our staff. So for example, maybe it'll be that they get to go and get their nails done. There's a gift card for nails, or for a massage, or for a free stretch, or things that require for them to service their bodies. But that's every 3 months. So whenever I went to a new networking opportunity the week before last, I was in Seattle and was just there to support a fellow entrepreneur of mine. And they had a guest speaker who specializes on grief. I think I will reach out to her and we will probably do a session together and work together for our nonprofit. And but she was talking about the different stages of grief, and she actually coined the Kubler-Ross grief graph, I believe. I can't remember what it's called. It's the original stages of grief, but she puts them more into context, and did her PhD dissertation on it. And we talked, and whenever they opened up the floor for questions, I raised my hand and I asked, how do I counteract the burnout and compassion fatigue that inherently happens with our staff? I don't want to say it's easy, but it's a lot more simple for us to counteract that for ourselves as humans. Even though we may not be aware of it, you become aware, and then you have a lot more control over your life. But how do I, as a business owner, not feel like I'm abusing my employees in, only addressing their, needs, or, trying to balance that out every quarter? Because I can't afford, as much as I'd love to hand out all these different services every week. And a lot of times people don't even make the time to be able to go and actually get those services. I have people that took 6 months to go and get their massage that I gifted them, and I had to hound them about it. So what she told me I was actually really interested in, and she talked about in between patients or residents or services, the caregivers taking their time, or nurses taking their time to take a deep cleansing breath, or 2 or 5, taking 2 minutes to themselves and sitting somewhere and taking cleansing inhale and exhale. Remember, we talked about Wim Hof, and we talked about in the detox retreat one how it provides that mental clarity, alkalinizes the body, promotes that balance in the pH of the actual entire system, which helps our nervous system and everything, right? So then I had that moment where I was like, oh, really? It's that simple. That being said, you can't undo years of burnout and abuse that we've subjected our physical bodies to without actually taking the time that we need to decrease the score, right? If our body keeps score, then logical science would only make sense if we could actually take steps backwards and decrease the level of stress that our body has harbored inside of it, right? So if we can do a combination and holistically come and really nurture our bodies and our mental health and our spiritual beings in a way where we can complete on all fronts and all systems. So, creating the boundaries, the appropriate boundaries. If you have a business, having a second phone and being able to turn that phone off so that it doesn't all come to your personal phone. Or, detaching from work, which, hey, I'm telling you everything that I have had struggles with and had to do, right? I've even taught my kids they are not supposed to use electronics in their bedrooms, especially not in their beds. So many times I've abused my own body and mentality. I'm exhausted from work. I just want to lay down, but I know I have to do more work. So I'll take that downtime and I'll have my laptop and I'll be doing work in my bed. And I've noticed that those times, if I make it a habit, it's much harder for my brain to unplug and to realize that my bed and my bedroom is a sanctuary for me to recharge my batteries, for me to unplug from the rest of the world, for me to be more responsible of my health, my body's health, my mental health, my spiritual health, and to turn on a meditation and things like that, as opposed to working once again, turning the brain back on and then struggling. That's why a lot of people talk about, there's a pill for everything. There's a pill for the anxiety. There's a pill for sleeping. There's a pick-me-up pill. There's all these different pills. I could name them all. If you want me to, I will. And I hope you're not using these to survive. But if you are using them to survive, you can taper down. Don't cut cold turkey. So if you're taking, for example, let's go through a normal day, right? If you wake up in the morning and you're struggling to be awake because you're exhausted, because we're burnt out, and I use my coffee, right? Coffee's like the simple guilty pleasure of life. But if you're taking a pill like Adderall, which is an upper, and to wake you up and to help you stay focused, and then you're turning around and you end up having anxiety because it's such an upper and your body's in fight or flight mode and it's inflamed and you aren't addressing your actual physical and emotional needs, and you end up being in this moment of, I'm anxious, I'm panicking, I can't, focus, I forgot to eat, so now I'm even more jittery, I'm having more caffeine, having palpitations, things like that, and then you take an anxiety pill, a downer. And then you go home, and what do? Maybe you're still working, or your mind is still in like overdrive mode, and you're trying to go to sleep, so you take your, trazodone or your Ambien, and that knocks you out so you can actually get some sort of rest. But because your subconscious has been so bombarded with all of these needs and all of this survival type mode, these are synthetic drugs, okay? They are not made to be a sustainable way of life. They were made to bridge a short gap of someone's psychotic episodes or sleep deprivation because of certain disease processes like PTSD, like insomnia, like things like that. Now, definitely check with your healthcare provider if you're on these for an underlying disease process. I get it. I understand. You're doing your best. And try to add as many non-pharmacological interventions as you can, such as working out, such as healthy diet, such as cutting out alcohol, such as all of these different things that will help balance you more, not synthetically, naturally, organically, so that you can cut back your doses of synthetic stuff, right? So we can use it to take the edge off or to help bridge us while we're changing our lifestyles, but don't plan on using them for years and years, because there is a chemical dependency and a brain rewiring that happens as you're using these items. So make sure that you are doing everything that you can to allow for your body to try and buffer. That's why it's so important for children to have their own bed and to sleep in their own bed. Not because we're mean parents, but because we're trying to teach them how to be adults and how to be able to sleep in a bed alone and how to self-soothe, right? We don't let kids sit there and cry at night, self-soothing because we're mean, but rather because we need that mechanism. That's a mechanism that stays with us for the rest of our lives. So instead of going ahead and popping an Ativan or taking a hit of weed or nicotine vape pens or things like that, which are becoming our pacifiers, our adult pacifiers, let's call it what it is, everybody, okay? Like, I like my share of different experiments and experiencing different items, but that's not to say that it's going to become a part of daily routine, hourly routine, every 5-minute routine. That's an important piece that we need to be able to identify. Do you have an addictive personality? Do you not? So that you can make sure that you are holding yourself accountable, because the last thing anybody in your life wants, including your friends, your partners, your parents, your siblings, your children, they don't want to be your everlasting accountability partner. Okay? People are going to be honest with you if you're a safe person to be honest with, but no mistakes. Everybody wants to love you unconditionally and love you for who you are and for everything that you're doing. And don't put them in that position where you need an accountability partner. Your best accountability partner is yourself. Okay? So learn all of these things. Write it down on a piece of paper. Write it down on sticky notes and put it on your mirror, which you're going to see every morning. Write it on a whiteboard. I don't care what you do, but you become accountable for your own for your own actions. That way, the people that are in your life can just stay busy loving you. Wouldn't that be beautiful? Wouldn't that actually help us so much in these burnout journeys? Can you see all of the connections coming together? Whereas some people may look and say, oh my gosh, I'm depressed. And realizing, oh my gosh, I'm actually burnt out. That's something that can be undone. And there are times when people are clinically depressed and it needs chemistry to be rebalanced in the brain, combination, maybe cognitive behavioral therapy, any kind of neurological type of interventions. Yes. Once again, we use these substances as bridges, but we shouldn't be in a place where we depend on them solely. And I don't take this lightly. I'm a nurse. I know what I'm talking about. Bipolar disorder, even. If you have anything like that, anyone that you talk to that has their condition under control, especially bipolar disorder, they will tell you that they utilize multiple different ways to keep it under control. It's not just the synthetic drugs that bring equilibrium and balance. It's also working out. It's also getting more than 7 hours of sleep at night. It's well-balanced nutrition. It's having the right people in your life that speak life into you. It's about having therapy or counseling. Let's stop having this culture of just diagnosis, right? It's okay. Diagnoses are important. It's important to be self-aware and everything, but let's not make this, our new culture and our new norm, because we were created in such a way in which our body can achieve balance. Our brain can achieve balance. We may have different substances that we need to help us get to that balance, but for the most part, our bodies have been created very resiliently. If we could only decrease the amount of stress and the amount of the cortisol hormone that we have running through our veins, that our pancreas and our thyroid and our thalamus and all of our different, regulatory bodily systems are pumping through our veins to just keep us alive, we could have a lot better results than what we are having currently. So, and I will say, I've talked to many different people about burnout, stages of burnout. Just taking a moment, even before you go home, putting a guided meditation, even if it's just 5 minutes. There's the Calm app. Jay Shetty is really good. Jason Stevenson, I always talk about him. He's my homie. He has a lot of good, even in Instagram, little short reels. Reels are 90 seconds long. Taking something to communicate to your body and sitting back taking a deep cleansing breath in through your nose, pursed lips out through your mouth, and it slows down your breathing, or taking the big Wim Hof breaths that are fast for 90 seconds, and then holding your breath, the last breath, and allowing that gas exchange to happen and that metabolic pH balance to happen. That's going to make such a huge difference, and it's going to bring your body into a centered place, so that whenever you're going to pick up your kids, you're in a great disposition. When you're going to work, you don't feel overwhelmed. When you're going home from work, you don't feel overwhelmed. Hopefully you're addressing whatever stresses you out at home. If it's not just you and it's something within your surroundings, being able to identify that and either talk about it or write it down and communicate it with your partner or your family, and being able to say, hey, when this happens, or when I'm coming home, I'm feeling like this and I'm having to do this. Can we identify what's going on? Obviously, if you're in an abusive relationship, I don't recommend really opening up that way to the partner necessarily. Do some more research, reach out to your local domestic violence chapter, and get some help with maybe some more clarity on, are you in an abusive relationship or is it just you? If you're confused, that merits bringing someone else in to help you decrease the confusion. And last but not least, I would love to talk about the 5 love languages. If you've never read the book, there are so many different variations. Now, same author, Gary Chapman, I think. Don't quote me on that. Look it up. You'll know. But I remember reading it for the first time when I had just had my second child. I was breastfeeding and I had a lot of time on my hands. So there are the 5 different love languages. There's acts of service, physical touch, words of affirmation, gifts, and what's the 5th one? Quality time. There's a free test you can take online to help you rank the different ones, but I'm going to give you an illustration, and this is where I'll leave this off at. And this works for yourself, first of all, and after that, for anyone else that you care about, including people that you take care of, including your kids, your parents, your family, employees, employers, supervisors, anybody that you want to have a good relationship with. It would be wise to find out what their main love language is. And some people may not know about it, but even if you just name them off, they might tell you, I feel like this one is it. There's usually a first and then a runner-up and then everything else that falls kind of lower to the totem pole. Okay? But if you observe someone enough and you get to know them enough, you'll kind of get to see what actually makes them tick in a way, right? So if someone gets super excited whenever they receive a gift, then gifts might be their number one. Or if someone, and sometimes people communicate love in their primary love language. So if there's someone that's always giving you great verbal affirmation and validation, that may be their love language. So just be very aware of that. But this is the illustration I wanted to give. So everyone has an internal love tank, right? And it's in the book too. Everyone has an internal love tank. If you can find out which fuel is their preferred and premium fuel to just dump, that's where the blind investment comes from too, right? You just keep on investing blindly in that tank. You're fueling. So if I'm a gifts person, and that's my main love language, that's what I respond to the quickest and the most effectively, and you keep on giving gifts. Now, gifts don't necessarily have to be financial in nature. They don't have to be expensive. They don't have to be pricey, but even something that has some intention behind it, like a little note or a card or, things like that. But a material thing, something tangible. If you keep on giving me a gift every time we're around each other, or more often than not, and then follow up with another, my secondary language, you're going to be filling up my tank. So every time I see you, guess what? I like being around you. Okay? But if you talk about yourself, for example, if your main love language is an act of service or physical touch. A lot of men say physical touch is their main love language, and a lot of men haven't even done the test, so I would recommend that you do it. But if you know of someone that physical touch is their main love language, it doesn't necessarily translate to only sex, right? You might just sit beside someone, and especially if it's someone like your kid, for example. If physical touch is their love language, obviously that doesn't apply, right? I'm talking about partnership. But if someone's love language is physical touch, even just grabbing them on the arm while you walk by, or giving them an extra long hug of appreciation whenever you're thankful and you're telling them thank you, demonstrating it with a hug, or shaking someone's hand, or whenever you're laying, if this is like a domestic partner type of situation, intimate partner, laying beside that person and watching a movie with them, but laying your legs on their legs, where you're like, hey, I'm here. I may not want to snuggle because I'm hot natured, but I'm here and I love you and I want to communicate that I love you. Different little bitty acts that will actually act as fuel and will fill up that love tank, so that whenever it's time for them to be depositing into your love tank, they're coming from a place where their love tank is full. They're content. They're not going to come from a place of, oh, I guess I better do this, or I'm not going to get this. So stop withholding that person's love language. If you know it, give to them, because from abundance, they will give back. Once again, this doesn't apply to an abusive relationship. Obviously, you could give your soul and everything and it won't be enough. But if you've identified that this is a person that you love, you trust, or even just respect at work, you're going to know how to communicate to them, and you're going to be teaching them how to communicate to you. So for example, I'll use caregivers for an example. If one of my caregivers love language is acts of service, then before they come on shift, if I'm the one that's they're going to be replacing, I will make sure that I've done some tasky things that make the beginning of their shift feel easier. Something as simple as emptying the trash cans, the waste baskets. I'll empty the waste baskets and they'll come in and I'll tell them if it's not already if it's not already like my responsibility. And I'll make it a point to tell them that I did that for them. That's an act of service, but it's also a gift, right? So all of these things, we all speak all languages and they all speak to us in some way. It's just some of them are going to be a lot more hard-hitting in a positive way than others. They'll have more weight. So if you think of the love tank, and you think of like all the minority languages that the person doesn't speak, if you throw in there like pieces of sand or pieces of small pebbles, how much longer is it going to take you to fill up that love tank than if you put in their main love language, which is the bigger boulders or the big rocks? It won't take you as long, right, to fill it up. And then you can fill with the smaller stuff, and the sand and the pebbles will fill in the gaps in between everything else. And that compiles like who we are, right? How we communicate love. If you've ever taken any kind of communication course, you know that 70% of our communication is nonverbal in nature. So whatever we speak, that may be someone's love language, don't get me wrong, but many, many times whenever we're communicating, here comes that 30% again. Oh my God. There's, I think it's only 30%, the verbal, like even that we even retain it. I don't know. You guys look it up, put it in the comments link in YouTube. Let me know. I'm curious to find out. But I really hope that this podcast will help people that are experiencing burnout currently, that have experienced burnout in the past and are afraid of experiencing it again. I'm one of those people. I survived extreme and total, complete burnout many, many different times. And recalibrating and balancing my life has been so beneficial. I've never been happier in my life. I've never been able to give as much as sustainably as I have been. I've always been a giver. I've always been an empath. But whenever you come from a place of, security, where you know that you're being taken care of, even if everything else crumbles and falls, by yourself at the very least, you come from a very different place, and it's never really hard to give. Okay? So that's my 2 cents caregiver burnout in general, compassion fatigue. I hope that you all take care of yourselves and enjoy the rest of your week. Okay? Peace.